There we go. Now we're live. My name is Rose Campbell. I'm owner of Normalizing VBAC, and we're interviewing moms today. Introduce yourself.
My name is Esther Vanderveer. I am 32 this year, and I have three children. The first was born by C-section in 2012, and the second was born by a VBAC in 2014, and I'm currently expecting my third, who will be born June this year.
Wow. So can you tell us about your VBAC? Or if you want to tell us about your C-section first?
Yeah, just just a little bit about it. I went in for a normal, prenatal appointment at 38 weeks, and it turns out I had preeclampsia. And although it was mild, but they were like, your term now. We need to get this baby out. Really have a problem with, but it was really sudden, and I was like, oh my god, I wasn't ready to get the baby out, and I had this feeling that I was nowhere near dilated or anything, that my body wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So they tried to induce me with Cervidil and Pitocin, and after 30 hours, nothing. Basically, I was 2 or 3 centimeters. I never really had contractions.
Wow.
Back together or anything. The thing is that they gave me what is it called again? Magnesium sulfate, which is something they give sometimes in preeclampsia. I think that was kind of too much. I really didn't need that. Because my blood pressure was only borderline high. It wasn't crazy high, but that's something that they give to mothers who are in labor, that they want to stop the labor. So while giving this, you're giving pitocin, my body was like, what the heck, it never really. Anyway, after 30 hours, they were like, you know what, this is not going to work. Normally we would just send you home, but you have preeclampsia, so we can't do that. So I agreed to a C-section, and I don't think it was altogether unnecessary. I just, looking back, I wish I had the C-section to begin with, and at 30 hours,
instead of
that wasn't.
Yeah. So was your blood pressure the only thing that was high, and that's why they were saying you had preeclampsia, or did you have protein?
Also protein in my urine, but it wasn't like again, it was just like a little bit. They never did a 24-hour catch either. It just, one day said it was one, and they said, okay, this is preeclampsia, which it was, but it was mild. And thinking back, I think I had it for a couple of weeks because I had bad headaches, and then
were you swollen?
I was swollen. Yes, my ankles were swollen, and I had this episode once with a really bad headache about maybe a week earlier, and my husband actually figured it was preeclampsia. I just didn't say anything.
Right.
Because I had this feeling of impending doom, which if you Google it, that's a symptom. And I really had this feeling that something wasn't right. And then it went away. And then, they diagnosed it. So I know I had preeclampsia. I just don't think it was like crazy bad. I guess I could have waited. I don't know. The thing is, the baby's head was also, although head down, but I think it's called a synclic or something. When it's head down, the pelvis, but rather kind of to the side. And I was bad, so I don't think he would have even moved. So I don't think he was coming out vaginally at that time.
Right. Yeah. All right. Now tell us about your VBAC.
That was an interesting story. So I couldn't get the same OB again. I like my OB, and although she didn't do my C-section, somebody else did. And the person who did my C-section later on came back and said, I only told this to 2 of my patients in my whole career, but your pelvis is too small and you could never birth vaginally. So at that time, I believed this, okay? Because, I had no reason not to, and I was like, she was very sincere. And I honestly I don't think she was trying to bullshit me. I think she thought that was true. I just don't understand how could she say that with such certainty. I don't understand that part. But I don't think she was trying to be mean or anything.
Yeah.
I couldn't go back to the OB who did my prenatal care for the first one for insurance reasons. I got the state insurance, but it wasn't Medicaid because I wasn't a citizen at the time, just a green card holder. So it was cheap perinatal. And my husband called, I think, 20 doctor's offices that took this had and one answered. And this lady, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say names. Maybe I'd rather not, but she wasn't a very good doctor. We were not a good fit. So I went there don't know exactly, maybe 10, 12 weeks. And I asked about the VBAC, and she said, sure, you can try whatever, we'll check. And so she does a pelvic exam, and of course, because we told her that we were told that my pelvis was too small, so of course she says, yes, your pelvis is pretty small. Well, we'll see, you can try. So I took, she does VBACs, whatever. She's not like all together. I don't do those, so I'm like, okay. But then
Pretty
the
open.
scare tactics. She started with the scare tactics, like every time something was up, like around 20 somewhat weeks, breach and kind of like up high, and she was like, well, she's up high because she can't get into your pelvis because your pelvis is too small. And I was like, what on earth is she talking about? The baby's 20 somewhat weeks.
Baby can
Why is
choose.
it supposed to be down? Or what does it matter if it's footling breach? I mean, I was like, oh, what's going on here? And but we can. And then well, there was a bad thing with the whole GBS swab, because she agreed that she wanted to do weekly cervical checks, which I was okay with, because it was quite uncomfortable for me still. It was really hard with my first, and then I still couldn't quite get used to them. So she comes into the room, and my husband witnessed this at the GBS swab at like 35 weeks, and she says, I'll do the swab, but I won't check your cervix because I know it's uncomfortable. So, okay, she does the swab, she turns around to put the sample away, and I was a little surprised. I was thinking to myself, why didn't she say sit up? Because we were done. Well, she turns back, and by the time she's saying this, she's already doing the cervical check. She says, I just got to do this. So she didn't even physically hurt me, but to my mind, that was unacceptable that she did that without my consent, and that's just ridiculous.
Oh,
Funnily enough,
wow.
about a year later, I wrote a letter or did it online to the Texas Medical Board about this and other things that she did. They basically wrote me back saying that cervical checks are a routine part of obstetrical care, and therefore no specific consent is required. That was the Texas Medical Board's answer. And I actually was so mad that I threw this letter away, but I wish to God I would have kept it, because I mean, I don't have words for that one.
Wow. You have a right to decline them.
Yeah, I know, but that's the thing. She came into the room and she said she wasn't going to do it, and then she did it sneakily before I even realized what was going on. And what I'm really mad about, that I didn't say a word at the time, and I even went back to her. I just kind of swallowed it like it was no big deal. But I mean, it is a big deal. And that's the thing. If she just told me, I really want to do this, whatever, I probably would have let her. And she didn't physically hurt me. My problem is the lack of consent.
Right. She told you she wasn't, and then she did. She told you she wasn't, and then she did it.
Yeah, she just did it. And she said, oh, I just have to do this. Oh, well, it's really high and closed. I'm like, you know what? I could have told you that. I probably did say that I could have told you that at 35 weeks, my cervix was high and closed. There was no point to it at all. It was just kind of like, I don't know, I guess that she could show me that she was in control or something. I don't know. Anyway, then at 38 weeks, I had an anesthesia because I asked for it because the baby wasn't moving that much, but she was fine. And then at 39 weeks, checked, also did an anesthesia and checked on the fluids, and there was fluids. Said nothing good happens from now on. She said that word for word, because it's true that the risk of miscarriage, stillbirth goes up after 39 weeks, but I think that's still a ridiculous thing to say, that nothing good can happen from now. Basically, at that point, she was pushing for a C-section.
A C-section.
And I said no, and I went back 40 weeks, a couple of days after 40 weeks, and that point, and that I needed to. And I said, I don't really want to. I want to try induction even. And she said, no, she will not induce. And she put it in my medical records, and she called a nurse in to witness her telling me that because my pelvis is too small, because I had a previous C-section, she will not induce. And I said, fine, but then I'm going to wait. So at the end, I actually agreed to schedule a C-section just to get out of her office. And we scheduled it for July the 2nd. And then I went home, and they called me and said, oh, well, the doctor is going out of town for July 4th weekend, so let's do it on July the 1st. So I said absolutely not, and just cancel it, and also get my medical records. Because at that point, I was like, no matter what, I don't want her to have anything to do with my labor.
Right.
Because she even said that she would augment if I went into labor and then it slowed down. She would give me a low dose pitocin, but I didn't trust her at that point because I mean she literally told me you're gonna kill your child. She's gonna get stuck and die. I didn't even understand what she was talking about because if the child gets stuck, that's when you do a C-section, right? I mean, what do you mean you will die? I don't know.
Oh.
Anyway, so at that point I was over 40 weeks, quite worried because I am a more like statistical and scientific person. I wouldn't want to go over 42 weeks personally. People do it. Maybe it's not a crazy risk. I don't like the thought of it, you know? So I was like, what the heck? And my mom was visiting from Hungary and her flight back was July the 2nd, I think.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I was like, the baby if I keep waiting or what? So I considered getting a C-section at like 42 weeks at the dot or something.
Right.
At that point, I hired doulas. I hired a doula through a doula agency, and they actually offered to send a second one who was in training, which was great. And they came and visited me, and we made a plan of, you know, I had all my medical records, I had my surgical record from my C-section that I was
Right.
gonna walk in this VBAC-friendly hospital and just chances when I'm in labor. So finally, at 40 weeks and 2 days in the evening, after taking some castor oil, I finally started to have contractions. And so I called the doulas, and they came. This was around what first contraction or so was around 7 in the evening, and they became painful around 10.
Mm-hmm.
To midnight, which was great because otherwise I would have just panicked and ran to the hospital because it was hard for me to deal with it because I never had real contractions before. You know, they really hurt and they came every 3 to 5 minutes. They lasted a minute. So I was in
Right.
active labor. And then around 2 or 3, I had enough. You know, I was in the shower. I was here at the hospital now. So we go to the hospital. They were actually pretty nice about it. Like they didn't seem too bothered that I wanted a VBAC. Except the lady who checked me in, that was really funny. She was like, "You want to give birth here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here in the middle of the night. Probably I'm here because of that." And but they checked me, and this was after, let's see, labor. I was 4 centimeters, but that was actually encouraging because I never got that before, you know.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, I don't want an epidural at the moment, but you know, I'm not saying I don't want an epidural at all because really my main goal was a VBAC as long as it's safe for both of us. I didn't
Right.
really care about epidural or not. And so after about around 9 or so, I did get the epidural because I was coping fine and bouncing on the ball and moving around. But then they said that the baby's heartbeat was doing something, so I had to stay in bed. At that point, that was really hard to deal with the contractions because they came every 2 minutes after. So I had a minute, and then another one came, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I got an epidural, and at that point, I was about 5 centimeters, at 9 or so. And then within 2 hours, with the help of a peanut ball, I was actually 10 centimeters within 2 hours. So it really helped me.
It helps relaxing.
Yeah, and my body could do its work. I didn't feel anything, but honestly, that worked for me just fine. And then the doctor came. They changed doctors, and the doctor came who eventually delivered her. And he's a great guy. His name is Dr. Chu, and he's actually a medical school professor, and he does VBACs all the time. So he had zero problems with this. He broke my water because my water still didn't break. I was 10 centimeters, and he said, you know, that's better to break it now because if we don't, it pushes more, and the uterine rupture risk is more. I had no problem with that because I was complete. And then he said, let's just wait until the baby is at +2 station before we start to push. And so that's what we did.
Yeah.
At an hour for the baby to move down on her own. And then
Uh-huh.
I pushed 2 hours. I think partly because I couldn't feel anything, but I pushed for 2 hours. They said I was doing good. Born. She did have meconium in the water. We saw that when it was broken, but they didn't seem too worried because her heart tone were good and everything. So they took her for about 5 or 10 minutes to make sure that all that meconium was out and she wasn't having a problem with it. but she was perfectly fine, and it all worked out. Thanks God. So that is my story.
Wow. And so when is your third due, I mean?
He is due June 18th this year.
Oh, wow. Are you with the same doctor that delivered?
No, actually, I went to another doctor that I saw in action, who delivered most of my sister-in-law's kids, and she's great, and she's VBAC friendly, and she'll also induce a VBAC if it looks like that should be done, which, I'm fine with that. I like to have options, I don't
Yeah.
like, you can only go to 40 weeks and we'll never induce you. Then what? Then I just have a C-section for no good reason? Because that's the thing. If I just had a C-section, it would have been completely and utterly unnecessary,
Yeah.
So I don't want that.
So what would your advice be for expecting moms wanting a VBAC?
That's a very good question. I think the most important thing is to have a provider that you connect with and who is supportive. Because if you know that this is a really, truly VBAC supportive provider, then if they say you should have a C-section for these reasons, then they're not just gonna try to bait and switch you, which is what happened to you, but rather you can trust them, because C-section is necessary. Like, I think another important thing going for trying for a VBAC is to accept the fact that you might have 60-70% chance, but that means 30-40% chance of C-section being necessary. So my thinking was, I want to try. Yeah, it doesn't work out, but if I didn't even try, then I would have always questioned myself, what if it would have worked? So I think it's important to accept that possibility. And also, I think a supportive provider is the most important thing. Like if your provider is not supportive, switch. Are you still
Yeah.
here? Yeah, I think that's really important.
Almost. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your story and giving moms advice. And I hope that you have another VBAC.
I hope so too.
You're breaking up. Are
I'm
you still
sorry.
there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Well, it was great talking to
Okay.
you, and I can't wait to hear your VBAC story.
Okay. Nice talking to you too.
All right. I'm going to end the broadcast.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.